Welcome into the Weather Wednesday podcast here at New England Storm Center. So, where else to start this week's episode than with the flooding that struck Maine and New Hampshire from our latest storm? So, in this storm, the highest total reported by the National Weather Service in New England was nearly 5 inches. 2 to 4 inch amounts were very common, really across the entire region, especially into Maine and New Hampshire. This did cause some flooding and some flash flooding, and based on everything that was forecast with this storm, the images of flooding and some of the road damage, it was on par with what was expected for a storm like this dropping this much rain. There was a lot of washouts, a lot of road washouts across Maine and New Hampshire. Wakefield, New Hampshire was hit particularly hard with the washouts. Their police department reported many washouts across their town. There was, pictures of, I saw one picture of a road in Maine. The culvert was completely exposed. There was a lot of collapsed sections of roadways near rivers. So all of this damage, this road damage, basically occurring where it was expected on my forecast map, my flash flood risk forecast map. It was basically all confined in that most likely area, more southwest Maine and into eastern New Hampshire, especially the eastern slopes of the White Mountains is where it got hit near the Maine border. So there were a lot of scenes like that coming out of those areas. In Conway, New Hampshire, there was a report of first responders being called out to West Side Road due to a medical event, it was called. And the first responders actually used a raft to get that patient across the flooded section of roadway so they could treat that patient for their medical event, the medical event unrelated to the flood, but they did have to use a raft to get that person to safety so they could treat her. So by Tuesday evening, there were 13 river gauges that had hit minor flood stage, exclusively in New Hampshire and Maine. So again, it was at least an inch of rain fell across a vast majority of New England during this storm. During the amounts that I posted on NewEnglandStormCenter.com were 2-day totals from Saturday night, Sunday throughout the day, Sunday night into Monday morning, but a vast majority of that did end up falling overnight, Sunday night into early Monday morning, which is why the flash flood risk was there. That while this was a drawn out event, rain started on Saturday and, it was on and off all the way through Monday to about Monday midday. A vast majority of those inches of rain did fall in a 6 to 8 hour time frame, which caused rapid rises in the rivers and the streams. And those river rises did continue through Tuesday. The White Mountains actually had a flood watch posted for yesterday for potentially more flash flooding as this unsettled weather continues. Of course, Tuesday ended up being a very wet day as well. Today there'll be showers, there'll be showers tomorrow, and this is all being caused by a stalled area of low pressure. It was actually the storm, the Sunday storm that came up, and it's now stalled just to our west. And it's blocked in. It's being blocked in. This particular blocking pattern is called an omega block, as if you look at a jet stream, it kind of takes the shape of an omega block, of an omega symbol, where you have a big ridge in the center of the country. And this setup, it just has this low pressure system just trapped where it is. It cannot move. And that's just going to lead to the same weather repeating day after day after day. And in our case, it's cool weather and showers that will be repeating until the block is able to break down, which this block is going to break down late this week. And we will start drying out on Friday. The temperatures should also start rising as this weather pattern finally breaks down. We had this weather pattern last week as well, and then it broke down very briefly over this past weekend, which allowed the storm to come up, and then it reformed and the storm got blocked in. So that is the situation. But things will be changing next week. And an interesting thing about this low pressure system that's sitting just to our west is you can really see on radar the big rotation that's around the low pressure system. And I'll put up a radar loop. This is from yesterday morning, but you can really see just all the showers and unsettled weather just rotating around. You can see them rotating up from the south into New England, and then it rotates around to Canada. And then on the backside, you can see where there's cooler air. What I should say is where there's cold air. There's cooler air everywhere around this low pressure system. But where there's cold air up north being pulled down on the backside, you can see snow showers and a pretty good snowstorm for Michigan. And this is just pouring it on in the Midwest. The Midwest has been really having just a never-ending winter. There's been nearly constant cold and snowstorms since the beginning of the year for that section of the country. And before, it was really California's atmospheric rivers, that constant pummeling of storms into California. And all those storms, they had to go somewhere after California, and they tracked right through the country, and it was just snowstorm after snowstorm in the Midwest. And it hasn't let up. The California atmospheric rivers, they've been cut off for the winter. They're done for the season. But the snowstorms for the Midwest have not stopped. Just 2 weeks ago, I called it the Spring King snowstorm for the Midwest parts of Minnesota and Wisconsin. Saw 20 plus inches, 20 to 2 feet of snow 2 weeks ago. And this stalled out system that we're dealing with, the rain showers, it brought a significant snowstorm really to the Upper Peninsula of Michigan. The UP did get 12 to 18 inches of snow on May 1st, this past Monday. And it's just the constant snow and the cold. It's just not letting up out there. I will say, and I realize that, it's the Upper Peninsula of Michigan, right? It's a cold place. I know it's said that the UP, or Michigan as a whole, has 2 seasons, winter and July. But it's May now, and, getting a foot and a half of snow, and you can see pictures out there that it was even able to start covering the streets despite the very strong sun angle. And I will say that the record latest snowfall in Marquette, May 24th. If there was ever a season that was going to beat that and drop snow later than May 24th, it would be this season, 2023. And Duluth, Minnesota has seen its snowiest winter ever this year, 2022 to 23 winter. Number 1 snowiest ever for them. So it just keeps on coming for the Midwest, although with this pattern change, it does look like it will be ending. And, as we get into mid-May, yeah, they could finally be done. I know I just said May 24th. They could beat it this year, but, we'll see. We'll see what happens. It's going to end eventually. It has to turn. The season has to turn eventually, right? So, we'll see what happens there. So moving on to the resort roundup, and now that we are into May, our map is basically empty. Sugarloaf in Maine closed this past weekend. I was surprised by that. I thought they'd be able to push into May, but as I wrote in the update on NewEnglandStormCenter.com, that the conditions and the logistics just didn't work out for them to get into May this year. So that leaves Jay Peak, Sugarbush, and Killington as the final 3. Jay and Sugarbush are planning to close this weekend. So I was right with my prediction. A few episodes ago, I made the prediction that Jay Peak would be the second to last to close again this year, and it looks like they're going to tie with Sugarbush, but it still counts. They were second to last, and really now at this point, the only real question with the Resort Roundup is, will Killington be able to push into June once again? Only time will tell on that if they will be able to push into June again. We'll just have to wait and see what happens, see what the weather's like, see how long it takes for Superstar to melt out. So we will see on that. So with all of that said, that is going to do it for this edition of the Weather Wednesday podcast here at New England Storm Center. So, as always, thank you for listening. Thank you for watching. Keep it right here. Keep it at newenglandstormcenter.com, and you will hear from me again next Wednesday.